We're already halfway through the year. That went fast, didn't it? But here's the thing, fast or slow, time isn't waiting. And whether you act or not, you're still training something. So let's talk about the reality we often overlook. Even when you're pausing, waiting, or not ready yet, you're still creating results. They just might not be the ones you want. Inaction isn't neutral. It feels like a pause, but it's actually a reinforcement. Every time you hesitate, delay, or avoid, your nervous system doesn't see it as waiting. It sees it as a pattern, and it builds that pattern stronger. Take something simple like working out. Someone I worked with kept saying, "This week's just too full. I'll start Monday." But that wasn't just a scheduling issue. It was a practiced emotional state. Each delay trained avoidance. Each maybe later trained inconsistency. And their nervous system learned that staying overwhelmed was safer than starting. This is how results are created, moment by moment, state by state. Your career, your health, your finances, your relationships, none of them are just outcomes. They're reflections of emotional states you've trained over time. That might sound confronting, but it also means every area of your life is shiftable. I once worked with someone who felt stuck in their finances. On paper, they had talent, ideas, even opportunities, but nothing moved. Why? Because the emotional state underneath was constriction. They had practiced scarcity for so long, mentally and physically, that expansion didn't feel safe. So even when chances showed up, they pulled back. Not consciously, but emotionally. In that state, it trained more of the same. Here's what most people miss. Training isn't just something you do intentionally. It's what your nervous system does automatically based on repetition. Every repeated emotion, every repeated thought, every reaction, it's all practice. Which means if you don't choose what you're training, you're still training. It just won't be what you actually want. One example, a client kept saying, "I don't know why I always feel tired, even when I rest." The pattern wasn't physical exhaustion, it was emotional depletion. They had trained a baseline state of pushing, proving, and never quite arriving. So rest didn't register, stillness felt foreign. Until they trained something new, like grounded presence instead of anxious striving, nothing changed. Because the state was leading the outcome, always. If you're halfway through the year and feeling behind, don't panic. Just pause and choose. What are you going to train today? Not in theory, in practice. This might look like shifting from frustration to steadiness before replying to that email. Choosing physical movement, even 10 push-ups when your mind says, "Don't bother." Directing focus for 1 hour instead of spiraling in distraction. You don't need to fix everything, but you do need to start training something different. Because that one choice, it rewires a state. And that new state opens up new actions. That's where momentum starts. If this is resonating, hit subscribe. Every week I share clear, grounded ways to train your inner world so your outer results aren't just accidental. The tricky part is this. Most of what you're training wasn't chosen consciously. It's old, it's patterned, it's wired in from years ago, often long before you had the tools to choose differently. And now it just feels normal. But normal doesn't mean aligned. It doesn't mean it's helping. One client realized they'd been holding back from intimacy for years, not because they didn't want connection, but because their nervous system had equated closeness with loss. So they kept relationships just okay. Not by decision, by pattern. That's why emotional training matters. You don't just understand the pattern, you retrain it from the inside out. So you're halfway through the year, but that doesn't mean anything unless you choose how to respond to it. This moment, right now, is a training opportunity. Will you train distraction or direction? Resignation or readiness? You don't need the whole roadmap. You just need to shift the emotional state you're in and let that shift lead the next action. Because the future isn't built in January or December. It's built in the reps you're doing today. The emotional ones, the mental ones, the physical ones. If you're hearing this and thinking, that's me, good. Not because you're stuck, but because you can change it. You're not broken. You're just been training a pattern that doesn't match the life you're committed to living. And now that you see it, you can start training something else. What emotional state are you unconsciously practicing over and over without realizing it? And what would change if you trained a different one? If you're ready to stop managing symptoms and start training a steady, resilient inner state, I've built a system for that. It's not about fixing, it's about rewiring through perception, emotion, and nervous system training. So you don't just cope, you shift. Links below. I also share weekly practices and tools on Instagram at Mike Wang Coaching. And if you want to go deeper, join the newsletter below. Thanks for watching. Thanks for training with intention. I'll see you in the next one.